Greetings, students. It's week 2 of the social lockdown. I have permanently attached a VR headset to my face and I now live in VR. I'm going to play some games and talk about the design of the game as I play it to give you some ideas for what you can write about in your essays. Alright, this is Ultrawings. I'm playing this with a controller, an Xbox controller, rather than the VR controllers, and you see the first thing it presents me with is a recenter view option. So that's very good design. That means I can sit comfortably in my chair, and then I press the back button and it recenters the view from my position. I like that. The first instruction I see here is wear the helmet, so I have to look at the helmet and then press the A button. I feel that's a little counterintuitive. I think I haven't explained very well how to use this interface. I have to point my head at the floppy disks, press the A button on the controller to put them into the computer. I think that's a bad interface. That interface is obviously designed for VR pointing controllers and not for an Xbox gamepad. And this interaction paradigm continues into the game. I have to look at the thing I want to use and then press A. Again, I think that's a great control scheme for a VR controller, but not so enjoyable when I'm using the Xbox controller. Let's take a look at some of the comfort mode options. So many people in VR find that they get motion sickness. Let's take a flight and I'll show you what I mean. Many people find that when they're flying the plane, they get motion sickness, particularly, let's start this up, particularly when there's a lot of activity in their peripheral vision. So your peripheral vision is what you see at the sides of your view. And in a game like this, where you can see outside the cockpit, there's a lot of motion happening. There's a lot of things you can see. Anybody who's very sensitive or susceptible to motion sickness is likely to have a hard time in this. So let's take a look at the motion sickness prevention techniques they've put in this. Let's quit out of here. Now I'm back in the menu screen. Let's set it to comfortable. And I'll show you what this looks like in the ultralight plane. So when I have comfortable mode on, you notice there's barriers around the cockpit. When I'm looking straight ahead, there's barriers around my view, so I have a limited field of view. Let's start up this plane. The engine. Okay, so while I'm looking forward, they've restricted my view to the sides. There's not a lot I can see. If I actually want to look there and I turn my head, they open up the windows and let me see. It's quite nice. While I'm looking forward, there's a sort of a tunnel vision effect. And this is done deliberately to reduce motion sickness. I think this is a very good system. Another thing I like about this is that the joystick moves, the pedals move. You notice the pedals moving down there? The levers move. So as I move my joystick, the real version in the cockpit moves too. I think that's a nice touch. Some VR games try to show your body, your legs and your arms as you're playing, and I find that a bit disconcerting because when you move your head around like this, the body doesn't correspond, the motion of the body doesn't match. Let's go and take a look at one of the other motion sickness modes in this. So let's try clear. And so in this version, we have the barriers around the frame which restrict your field of view, but they don't completely close off the windows when you're looking forwards. And then just to contrast this, I'll go right back to none. So there's no comfort settings added here. Put on the helmet. And so in this mode, which I actually enjoy most, you can lean out over the side like this and look over the wheels. And as you take off, you really get a sense of height. So this mode's great for people who are good at flight sims or enjoy first-person shooters and don't get motion sickness. So this game is Ballistic NG. This is a racing game, similar to Ultrawings. You're inside a cockpit. Let's take a look at this. It's a clone of the PlayStation game Wipeout. So let's take a look around. The first thing I like in this is that the cockpit is mostly transparent. You notice that I can look down and see the floor through the cockpit. Now this is a very fast-paced game with a lot of sharp corners, and this is going to be a nightmare for anybody with motion sickness. So there is an external view where you can view your vehicle from behind, and this is obviously a lot easier for people with motion sickness. There's a first-person view like this, but I like this cockpit view. So many people would like to play in the cockpit because it's so immersive, but they might find that they can't last long. It's just too difficult for them. It triggers nausea. So they have an option in here. If I pause the game and go to Config, Options, Gameplay, Cockpit, you'll see here it says VR Cockpit Mode. It's currently on Player Tilt. I'm going to switch this to Cockpit Tilt. Let's go back and save this. And this is the way PlayStation's PlayStation VR's Wipeout game behaves as well. It tilts the cockpit while keeping the player's camera still. Let's take a look at what that looks like. So now my horizon stays level when I turn, but the cockpit, the vehicle tilts around me. I'm hitting some lines here, okay. See how the cockpit is tilting, which gives you the impression that you're turning without tilting the camera. This is a very clever compromise. It makes it easier for players to play inside the cockpit mode, which is obviously the most immersive and most satisfying way to play. But it alleviates the motion sickness caused by tilting the camera. So tilting the camera is the #1 thing to trigger motion sickness. If your eyes see a tilt that your inner ear doesn't feel, you get a discrepancy and it starts to trigger motion sickness. Personally, I actually like it better when it tilts the entire cockpit, so I prefer this mode. Let's go back and show you the difference. Gameplay, cockpit, player tilt. Save. So I prefer playing like this, but many people just can't last long like this. So as a VR designer, you've got to think about not only what you want to make or how you want your game to play, but how other people are going to play your game, how they're going to feel, and will they be able to play it for long enough. Okay, so that's Ballistic NG. Alright, in the next video I make, I'm going to play some room scale VR games where I'll use the VR controllers, and I'll talk about design ideas and locomotion and interaction schemes and techniques that those styles of games use for avoiding motion sickness.